So, hi, I think we're live. Let's see. Sometimes there's a slight delay going live on Facebook. Um, okay. So, hi, everyone. And hi, Matthew. It's great to see you. Thanks for
An
being here
honor to be
today.
on the community.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Mhm.
Um, so, before we start, I wonder if you could lead us through some kind of centering. Yes?
Yeah, one of the things that I like to do, especially in times like this, there's like getting calmer, and then there's also a sense of expansion. So rather than just like more meditative one, I want to do one that takes advantage a little bit of not movement, but inward action. So first, slowly on your sitting bones. So in order to do that, you got to get more input into your brain. So like you might want to lift up a little bit and then set yourself back down more equally. So you have more input coming to your brain, right? Because I want to emphasize in this beginning part some symmetry in the body between the sitting bones, but also between the inner heels, right? So you start to activate your legs, and whether or not you, like I'm a spinal cord injured person, so I can't quote feel my legs, but I can feel my legs. So I want you to just get a sense of your body and the symmetry of your body. So each sitting bone, each inner heel, right? Now, if you're by a table and can put your hands down flat, do that because grounding your hands and feet simultaneously, again, whether you can feel exactly where your feet are, which I can't, um, helps the brain settle. Close your eyes from top to bottom if you're comfortable with that. So between the sensation of where your sitting bones are, your inner heels, your hands, balance your head over your neck. Use the sensation of balance to help you go inward. And now in this position, very gently, when your mind is present throughout your whole body, your consciousness is in your feet, your sitting bones, your hands, your head is balanced over your neck and torso. I want you to very gently lift your sternum and try to watch how that gentle, I mean, very slight, sends awareness to your whole body. And unfortunately, the mind learns best from losing. So drop your sternum just a little bit and notice the change in your body presence. The seat of consciousness, according to a lot of traditions, is in the center of the chest. So again, as you have your consciousness in your feet, your hands, your sitting bones, your head's balanced over your neck, activate slightly in the sternum, soften your jaw, the inside of your mouth. Keep consciousness in the whole body and observe the inhalation in through each nostril, how it goes into each lung. Keep your consciousness in your sitting bones, in your feet, in your hands. And let whatever breath you're taking touch the whole vessel because consciousness follows breath, or prana follows breath more than it follows. Prana follows consciousness more than it follows breath. Excuse me. Make sure you keep the inside of your mouth soft and your sternum lifted. Notice how the breath nudges into the rib cage. Especially be aware of the bottom floating rib. and then slowly release. You're ready to open your eyes. So one of the things that I think is that in this time when we're like in Minnesota, we just started away at this, as we're like, our life is having to recede some. There's a whole opportunity there, but part of it is we also have to keep expanding from inside to out. Because one of the things that fear does to I think your presence of your body is it makes it recede. So just because you're receding from the wider hub of your life doesn't mean you're receding from right near the hub of the wheel, the inner hub, right? Because I think that expansion paradoxically is really important right now to maintain.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah. So, and the thing is I like to say a lot too, is that your body's the best home your mind will ever have, especially when the mind is judging safety, right? When you're worried about safety and thinking about threat and invisible threat, it'll recede. It'll make awareness recede out of the body, and then it loses stability. So like I've been practicing, instead of just like more like Shavasana, I've been practicing more of a slight expansion in that quiet. So I keep the life force moving while it's being grounded by the quiet, and not just like seeking Shavasana when I'm trying to center, in what's going on. So it's just a slightly different way of thinking about it.
Yeah, I love that. I think Shavasana is hard. So, right now for me, meditation's hard. There's my mind's busy. It's hard to just stop. So there's got to be something else.
So I do think that little bit of like, it's almost like sending a ping right through the emptiness, and making sure that it's coming from a place that feels more life, right? Which is, we know, like a lifted sternum is in every single asana. So the thing is, what I didn't mean is like you do something big and large. You go and just do that tiny little lift. Like that first move into action needs to be nonviolent. It needs not to be too defensive. So I've been studying in my practice for a while now, that first impulse into action, and trying to make sure that first step, that I don't believe that it starts with my effort, right? People, I think, mistakenly believe that their poses start with their effort.
Yeah.
They don't. They start before effort begins. That's a humbling truth, but also a smoothing truth, right? And it's one of the truths I've encountered because I live with a disability.
So wait, where do they start? Where does it start? Before the effort?
Is that the asana starts before your effort. And like I like to say it this way, every pose begins and ends in what you call the sensation of relief. Right. And so like people think their poses start with their effort or exertion, and they don't. And this is one of the core things I've learned from practicing yoga with a disability. Right. And that's kind of brings us into part of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
About the kind of things that comes from a person practicing yoga and asana from a disability point of view.
Yeah.
Is that there's like, if you think about, I'm paralyzed from the chest down. If you think about, could I ever activate an action through my legs? And the answer is, it depends on what you think, or start a pose from my legs. And that means that if the answer is yes, which I know it's yes, because I experience it, it starts not with my physical effort. And I would also argue it doesn't start with my imagination either. But that's part of the insight that perhaps we're going to talk about, is what it's like to have a disability, and what kind of teacher that is for learning asana and pranayama.
Yeah, that's what I mean, that's what the topic is today. And I didn't really introduce you, but I think probably everyone knows you who's on here. And I hope so. I posted a picture of your book in the thread this morning and people were excited. There were a bunch of questions, which I'll try to think of some of them, but mostly I think I could just let you go and you'll probably just tell
Yeah,
us
no,
everything
for
you
sure.
need. But one thing came to my mind when you were just saying that about where a pose starts. I was writing a little. I've been trying to write the last few days, and I was thinking about um, my state of mind and meditation and what is helping me right now. And I was reading Thich Nhat Hanh, and I love this. This is a quote that I was using. I was quoting him. He says, "Sometimes your joy is the source of your smile, but sometimes your smile can be the source of your joy." And that kind of reminded me of what you were saying. It was like the relationship between the feeling and the movement. And we get so caught up in the movement in yoga, but also we can use it too. Like I think asana is has been so effective for me recently to help me get out of my head. And I think that's kind of what he's referring to too. Like I've been trying to smile sometimes in meditation. Like that's my meditation right now. Just making myself smile and I feel better. Like it brings a little joy when things feel really hard.
And I think that that's one of the really profound ways in which asana is can inform the other limbs and vice versa, right? Is exactly because of that, that at some level your body can show your mind the way too, right? And so like, and it's not just like fake. I mean, like you can. I also think this is what inversions are teaching
Mm.
is that you can move from one direction or another, right? But the smile, a smile as an expression of joy, that's a two-way street, right? That's not a one-way street. And that's one of the beautiful things Thich Nhat Hanh is saying there, is that there is no such thing as a one-way street in yoga ever. And so the fact that sometimes because you're inwardly so agitated, like this is a time, that sometimes the outer practice can inform the inner practice
Mhm.
and vice versa. I would never want to practice only one way. That would be the mistake. I mean, I
Yeah,
think if I make a mistake in my practice, it's too much from inside to out. But again, that comes from living with a disability,
too
right?
much.
Um, but I think that being aware of the two-way street. I've got a really wonderful story about Thich Nhat Hanh
Yeah.
um, from Krista Tippett, right? So I was on that show in 2006, and she lives in Minneapolis where I'm from, and so I know Krista. We keep in touch sometimes, and she told me this one of us. She's one of the only people I know that's actually out there, and people know of her. But like she says this wonderful. She said she's Thich Nhat Hanh's on that show,
Mm.
and she said, and this was years ago because maybe things have changed because she's interviewed a lot of people. But she said she's never felt anything even close to being in the presence of God for
Wow.
Krista Tippett on Being as
Wow.
when sitting next to Thich Nhat Hanh. That like his presence like changed the shape of everything. Like she expected that from the Dalai Lama,
Uh-huh.
but got it from Thich Nhat Hanh. Like he just like did something and made her just buzz just because of how pure. So like even in a line from Thich Nhat Hanh that seems like, oh yeah, that's obvious. It's like, no, it's coming, assume that it's coming from the place
Yeah.
and work, with anything from Thich Nhat Hanh, that's how I work is backwards. I assume
Huh.
profound enlightenment
Yeah.
and try to work. I don't wait for the enlightenment to find me, right?
Yeah.
I like try to go like, no, okay, I got to keep sinking into what was just said. He's one of those ones I think is just. I'm glad he's in your next writing or whatever that
Oh
is.
yeah. I don't know. It's hard to find teachers these days. So many have, been shown to be abusers or something. And I think, I don't know. I don't think there's any scandals with him. I could be wrong, but he feels very pure to me. And I feel like I get inspired by him a lot. Um, I feel that way about
Yeah.
you too. I get inspired by you a lot. I
Oh,
don't know. I'm
believe
serious.
me, don't look
I
for me. No way. But
I do. I've known you for a while, but we've got to work together more recently, and that's been really fun.
Mhm.
So it's been fun, talking to you and just having conversations with you because we always end up talking about this stuff.
Yeah, that's well, unfortunately, but it's kind of my diet, right? I think about this stuff all the time, and
Yeah, me too.
I'm always looking for the energy of wisdom, right? And that helps me as all these teachers fall,
Yeah.
right? Because the energy of their wisdom was not dependent on their particular manifestation.
Mm.
It is when you think about it in relation to our culture or having them be a role model or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
But to me, certain truths, you just like the things from Thich Nhat Hanh would be a perfect example.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh, if he ends up having had been confused on his path, right? Then
Yeah.
okay, I doubt it, right?
Yeah.
That would be a surprise, right? But it's like, boy, I can feel the energy of what he says. And to me, that's the fabulous teacher is when they're saying stuff that is universal, that is so transcends what they were as a human being. And that's, so I'm looking for role models, but also just to feel when something just goes dead on. It's like, whoa, I can
Yeah.
hear that.
Well,
Like there's a great in a David Byrne song. It's a love song. It's like
yeah.
you have a face with a view,
Mhm.
and I have lines like that when I encounter. A lot of
Mm.
some of them have been from Thich Nhat Hanh. When all of a sudden I can just see and feel into the utterance, and that's because it captures part of existence and isn't so much out of their mouth. At least
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's beautiful. And I think it's reminding me of the situation we're in right now. The whole like takedown of all the gurus has been positive in some regard because I think it's putting more, I would say, responsibility in the hand of individual practitioners and also very challenging for many people. But I think it's shifting the power. It's not about the guru, it's about our own practice. And I think what's happening now is similar, painful, but similar. And like people aren't able to go to their yoga classes and meet with their teacher or their group, their community. They're having to practice at home alone. I think
Mhm.
there's a potential there too for like going into yourself and exploring by yourself.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, and I'm more of an asana and pranayama teacher, right? And that's just like my limitation and part of my strength, right? And the home practice, no matter what you think you're learning in classes and from a teacher, at the end of the day, if it's not going through the sifter of your home practice,
Yeah,
it's not landing all the way. But that's a tremendously difficult hurdle is developing a consistent home practice. And so that's one of the signs of someone that's decided to even go deeper on the seeking path. And what I feel bad is people think it means an hour a day. It can be 2 minutes a day. But
yeah,
one of the things that I think is happening as I've taught a couple of classes online now, or more, I've done things in the past, is that I think that I'm trying to teach differently. I'm trying to teach more of the spirit of exploration that you have from your home practice
mm,
rather than trying to repeat a class setting. Because
mhm,
exactly there is an opportunity to help students be in their own home and figure out what it means to seek, how the pacing isn't like a class that you come to in person, that you get to sit and explore and wonder and process, right? Instead of just thinking it's about the sequence or
mm,
whatever. It's like, no, you should process sensations when you're home.
mm.
You go to class to get like a faster or whatever you go for, but the opportunities to really deepen your awareness come in a home practice. So I think in some ways it may never go back to the same,
Yeah,
right? I think that every studio now is likely to have a couple of online classes,
yeah,
right, for people that travel, but also because I think it affords a different opportunity to learn.
yeah.
So
I agree. And I think it's actually more accessible for people with disabilities, many who couldn't go to studios in the first place.
that's why we're launching this great big thing called the
You were
Hub,
doing it anyway.
and
Yeah.
it's like here it comes. Like this is
Yeah.
exactly what we're trying to do because that's the
Yeah.
way the reaches the most people is that there are so many. for someone with a disability to get to a class, especially if they can't drive, or it is unbelievable. Like in the Twin Cities, there's this thing called Metro Mobility that drives, that is this thing from the state level government, and they have to have 4 days in advance, and the window of pickup or drop off is 2 hours.
Right. Right.
So many times our students are there 2 hours early.
I know.
They're waiting for 2 hours, right? It's unbelievable
Yeah.
what it takes to get to a class.
Right. It's an all-day event. It's like
It's an all-day event. So part of it is that this is part of why we're trying to figure out better and better how to teach this other way.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean in-person things aren't important too,
Right.
Here's an example of this, with all the liability stuff, and this is a really complicated issue. But like it was an interaction I had with their board. We're trying to figure out how to navigate we can physically help an adaptive student in a one-on-one session, right? Because of all the vulnerable adult laws and stuff. And my board asked the question that we had to work through. It's like, well, we don't do that many of those sessions anyway. Maybe we should just eliminate one-on-one sessions for people living with disability. And I said, okay, I get from the liability issue, with the vulnerable adult laws and stuff. And I get that. But if we decide to do that based on risk, let's just do it with our eyes wide open. And eye wide open means that, yeah, you think you're protecting the person, but look at your own life, Jivana, and my life. The most important interactions I have are usually one-on-one.
Yeah.
Right? The most meaningful ones, they're not 1-on-2, they're not 1-on-3, 1-on-4, they're one-on-one, right?
Yeah.
And so it was this really interesting thought process to go through with our board at Mind Body Solutions, was because, look, how are we gonna, I don't say we shouldn't deal with the risk, but doing the easy legal thing, that let's just eliminate them, that's the maximum way to eliminate risk. Actually, for someone that lives like in an institutional setting, they're very rarely getting one-on-one interaction, right? And so if we do it, okay, but have your eyes open as to what you're doing when you're making decisions and managing risk based on a more legalistic perspective. Where we came out on this, I'm not even going to tell you, but it was a really healthy discussion for the board to realize that something that so many of us take for granted, which is one-on-one interactions in which you're not a patient, are sometimes very rare for someone with more severe disability.
But now we're all online.
We're all online.
There's
Yeah.
no touching. So what's your platform? Is it available already? The online?
It's just it's the hub. It's on our website. We're gonna start dropping 2 videos a week, short clips a week, starting this coming Wednesday. There's things that are already up there.
So at mindbodysolutions.org.
mindbodysolutions.org. But there's also on YouTube, it's a YouTube channel. It'll be called The Hub. So there'll be a lot of content. We got 86 videos ready to go that are shorter, but part of it's hard now because a lot of them happened before COVID-19, or actually I decided not to use that word. I call it the virus that shall not be named. So know that's what I mean. A lot of them, so you don't want them to be tone deaf for all that's going on right now. But yeah, no, it's a big undertaking.
Wow. So I want to ask you about our topic though. Like you started talking about it in the beginning and then I think I got distracted, but this question about the uncontrollable, handling the unknown. There was one question I thought it was interesting. Someone asked a question about how do we deal with anxiety when we're teaching, like getting up in front of a group? And that it felt connected to this other question. Anxiety feels like the theme. I actually have anxiety. That's something I'm diagnosed with personally. I deal with anxiety. It comes and goes in my life, but I think that's part of this practice, dealing with the unknown, uncontrollable.
In a couple of things, like we can talk about this from the perspective of anxiety, but also from one of the things that we don't really think about and don't realize is there's already so much that we're not able to control, right? I mean, and so already, Jivana, you or whoever is already a master of
Hmm.
things you can't control, right? Like you don't have to digest your food directly,
Right.
right? I mean, you don't have to be part of the process. There's a whole bunch of things. And so the sensation of your existence already has in it uncontrollable energy, right? And part of it is to remind people that there's so much. Like, so when I teach asana, I want people to be much more aware of the back side of their poses,
Hmm.
their back body, behind their head, because to me, asana, when it's done beautifully well, and that can happen through any body, is the yoking together of what you can feel and control, which is what the mind's going to latch onto. You yoke that together with what you can't feel and can't control. And if you're honest about our manifestation, all four of those are in every single pose,
Hmm.
right? And so I do think that then that's part of like the part that, like, so in a way the back body presence is almost symbolic or metaphorical too. It's literal, but it's also like, as I try to lift my chest, I can try to do it from the front side of my body more, where I have more control, or I can try to figure out what it means to, this words work better for me, migrate my upper thoracic forward,
Hmm.
which is a different sensation, which makes me have to pause and yoke more together what I am, not what my mind sees, right? So if you constantly start the process,
Hmm.
and that gets back to what I said in the beginning, where a pose begins and ends, where your breath begins and ends. One of the big insights for me was when I had my yoga teacher say, there's inhalation, retention at the top of inhalation, there's exhalation, and there's retention at the bottom of exhalation. And those are the four components of breathing. That the retention is part of the breath,
Hmm.
that the breath is continuous. My mind can never fully, ongoing, be aware of that it's continuous.
Right.
So already just in the process of breathing, there's a lot going on, right? And so I think as yogis, we've been practicing the uncontrollable way
Hmm.
more than we know. Now the
Right.
mind's going to freak out about that, right? What? It's uncontrollable? It's like, yeah, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of that. And this is part of why I think that in some ways people with disability, in my experience, are often even more profound asana practitioners, especially when they're confronted with a physical disability, right? Is that they have as one of their teachers more of their body that everyone's so used to being able to control being an uncontrollable variable, right?
I
And
love
like,
that.
how do you allow that in without thinking, oh, it's uncontrollable? So no, part of your manifestation is
Yeah.
uncontrollable, right? And so all of someone with a physical disability has is it louder, but everyone's got it.
I love that. I never heard, I maybe haven't heard you say it that way, but it just makes so much sense because I feel the same way about my students with physical disabilities, that I was just always impressed with the way people would practice. It just felt different, and it's generalizing, but it was always something special. That's actually how accessible yoga started, because
Right.
I was leading a 200-hour training and I kept having more non-disabled people coming. And then I had students with physical disabilities in my other classes, and I was trying to get them to become yoga teachers because I felt that happening in their practice, and they didn't want to do it. So we started the term accessible yoga started because I was like, oh, we'll do a 200-hour accessible yoga teacher training for you, because you all should be teaching. You should be teaching that.
Yeah. In part of what I find is one of the big hurdles when you have someone who's, quote, got a physical disability, right? And I'm putting that in quotes because
Yes.
whatever, everyone's physically disabled on some level, right? Whatever.
Right. That's
And
why we say non-disabled people and people who are disabled
yeah,
instead
and
of
the thing that the other thing before I say what I was going to say is that that like I don't think disability is a bad word. I offended a whole group
No.
when I said something. Hey, by the way, you're aging. You're becoming less able. You share disability with me, and they got really offended. It's a very like very socially aware, politically correct group, and I want to say, hey, disability is not a bad word.
No.
I'm okay with it, right? You don't have to work
No.
around the word.
Yeah.
It, but whatever. So, but one of the things that sometimes is hard when someone is trying to fit into a yogic setting and lives with a disability, right?
Yeah.
What I first see often is often I see this as part of their phase that I'm actually trying to be patient with and support, but also help them move beyond is the idea that they think their disability, like let's say they've got a stroke and they're paralyzed on one side of their body, right? And they really try to use all their will to try to get the arm that doesn't work as well to work as well as the arm that does work. And
Yeah.
so they think about like fitting into being a yogi as using will to overcome their disability so they fit in like everybody else. And that's one of those phases that a lot of people at first, when they first acquire a disability, like by injury or by bad luck, whatever, and that we often let them to get to realize that no, they don't just have to act upon their disabled part.
Mm.
They have to learn to unify with the part that doesn't work as well and let so my paralysis is one of the greatest yoga teachers I've ever had
Right.
because it has taught me that I can't succeed by trying harder.
Right.
That's been an incredible teacher. I
Yeah.
don't get to turn up the volume. I
Yeah.
have to change my hearing.
Like you said,
Right.
the uncontrollable is the teacher. It reminds me of how like right now it's frustrating to feel like we can't do anything to like fix the situation we're in, right? You know, we can serve by staying home. Like that's what I mean. That's the
Right.
similar idea. Like that's the way you can do most is by not
and,
doing.
and stay grounded in the smaller spaces. I
Mhm.
think back to your question about the teacher that's worried about coming into a group. Like, what do you do when you're anxious about teaching a
Yeah.
group? The
Yeah.
circle full way back is like, well, part of it is that there's always uncertainty, and that's a sensation you have to get better at having. Like, and my body awareness helps you with that. I also like to let people know like everything is always a little bit uncertain for the mind. The mind is what has the uncertainty,
Mhm.
not your consciousness, right? Your
Right.
mind has uncertainty. And that to me, that's part of why in a class, I think it's really important to be nice to your students because when you make a mistake, when you actually seize up, you're having a moment. It's the community that holds you up. If you create a condition of connection in your classes, everything becomes more forgiving.
Yeah.
It's not, and the people that get really anxious in teaching yoga, I think often, not all the time, are thinking that their knowledge has to be what leads the class.
Right.
And I think their knowledge helps. I think that being able to be part of a group is the core of what
Mhm.
a yoga class should be, especially when you're having people of all levels of ability. And
Yes.
so if you can get this, to me, that's how part of the way that I try to do it, right?
Well, I
Is
love how like you call your classes humanity disguised as yoga, right? Isn't
Mhm.
that one of the things you're saying? So it's about
Yep.
that. It's
Yeah,
like
and letting the group. I mean, being vulnerability. If the teacher shows vulnerability, the group bonds. If the group laughs together, the group bonds.
yeah.
And letting the onus of the class be the group. It's the group's class too. It's not
Yeah.
just what I know. And to me, that makes it way easier. Right? But it means allowing the fact that your group dynamic could go any way and the group will solve it. You don't you
Yeah.
don't have to solve every problem. The group will laugh and go, wow. Or I just did it all the time. I was teaching online and I did one side on a pose and didn't do the other. And one of my students leaned in and said, "Hey, Matt, you forgot to do the left side." It's like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
I got excited. All right, everyone
I-
back, and it becomes part of the bonding. The vulnerability is the bonding in a class.
Right. And
The shit,
vulnerability is more than that. It's embracing the uncontrollable. It's like you said, like to
right.
be vulnerable is to say that I'm okay not being in control.
And it's
Yeah.
also when you allow the ability or the uncontrollable, it's also an investment in your own resiliency, right? Because if you let things be uncontrollable, it's when you can allow what is the truth. Remember, truthfulness is one of the yamas, right? And the truth is that a lot of the dynamic in your body and in your life is uncontrollable, right? But when you allow that, it also is a step of confidence, not just pure unadulterated surrender. It's a confidence in your own resiliency to manage whatever comes, right? That your class, I'm thinking about the teacher now. If you make a mistake or something happens, the group will handle it, and you're
Yeah.
part of the group, right?
Yeah.
And so it's this other kind of faith that, yeah. And part of this happened, having been in an accident when I was 13, I'm 54 now. This is one of the things that there are some experiences that I would have a hard time with. I mean, obviously, but one of the things that my life showed me, and often people with disability um, have mastered this more than others, is that with there isn't that much that can happen that you can't handle. And I
Mm.
feel I feel that some of the most fearful people, and I mean fearful who are aggressive and try to be in control all the time, right, are the ones that don't really know and have confidence in their own resilience, right? Like they're gonna be okay. Or the person that's afraid of crying because they think that their tears will never stop. It's
Yeah.
like, no, you know what? Your tears will stop. You'll get so
Yeah.
tired you'll fall asleep, right? And you'll wake up and there won't, tears do end, and then there's another feeling. It's like you will most things you're gonna be okay with. And that's a level of confidence. The uncontrollable can still be uncontrollable if you can be invested in your own ability to survive time.
Right. And actually, it reminds me of tapas, the concept of accepting painful situations. It's not about being masochistic so much as just being willing to learn from life and realize that you're resilient and you can grow. And that's the first step in spirituality, I think, is to have faith in something beyond your mind and your body, to connect with something deeper. That's what those
Mhm.
challenges force us to do.
And even in, you can describe this by any number of descriptions, because remember, there is what happens and then there's how we describe it. So
Yeah.
um but even when your life is being really hard, it's still being company with you. You're still not, not alone. Like at the core level, nothing can get between you and your connection to the universe.
Hmm.
That's part of the promise that's here, right? And I feel bad when people live with a lot of chronic pain, they lose touch, that somehow the pain gets artificially between their direct connection to the universe, right?
Hmm.
And that is, you are a manifestation of what is, and this isn't just an idea. This isn't just it's like literally true. You are a manifestation of it, right?
Right.
That connection is pure. And then the rest of what happened, and you can call that an act of faith. That's it would be faith for the mind to believe that. But the thing about truth is that truth is true whether the mind can grasp it or not, right? So I
Yeah.
make the assumption, which I know is true, that I am a direct manifestation of what's happening. And the way that I know that truth the best is in Shavasana.
Hmm.
When I support my spine, when I let relief in, when I let my bed hold me up at night, when I don't try to hold up the world, I let my bed hold me up. That's when the truth of there's nothing between me, even when my body hurts. The mind can get confused about pain and have it go, oh, somehow the pain's below. No, it's only below your mental awareness. You can find the direct connection again. That's, I think, part of the promise, but that's just a word that puts it in terms of a certain way. It's part of what's true, right? And that's part of what I want. I'm thinking about the teacher in front of the class still.
But I love how you tell me you're an asana and pranayama teacher. That's one of the funniest things to me, because what you just said to me is like, that's yoga philosophy. That's the essential teaching that we're trying to connect to.
What I love about the 8 limbs is that they're all in every limb.
Yeah.
Right?
I get that, but sometimes the way I say it is that I think yoga is preparing us to die. But it's the same idea, that it's learning how to accept the unknown, to learn
big unknown.
Right. And to also understand the mind's place in your life, rather than to let it be in charge, to have perspective.
So one of the reasons I think that's so difficult, and this is like gets into my weird language, right? And what's my next finished book, which it's done, and it's like I was waiting for a publisher, but is that what's so hard about the mind is that it literally, and the language may not make sense, but it literally arises out of emptiness. So it fundamentally does not have grounding.
Mm-hmm.
Fundamentally. And that's its job. It comes out of an energy that's ungrounded until you realize that the energy is grounded. And to me, the body's been one of the ways that's been, but mind left alone.
Yeah.
When the mind has to judge emptiness, we're going straight to hell. Right? Right. Because once the judgment starts happening, it's a rabbit hole that doesn't end. Right. So that to me, that's why the body in how I'm configured is so important, because it's the place where I can have the emptiness which is the source of mind, which I'm not saying is consciousness, right? The source of mind is also present in my body in the emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's funny though. I would just say, I think of it differently, just because I think of the mind is so present for most of us. Like, I think that thought you just described is beyond most of I should just say for myself, my mind's ability to really comprehend, because it's like imagining not being there, imagining not having mind is so hard for my mind to do. So I've been, because I'm working on my next book too, and I'm working a lot on how to have a relationship in the mind with itself that's more honest. Oh, wow. It's more honest and more based in the truth of my experience, rather than in the fantasies that it goes off on. You know what I mean? But like, give it perspective, to put it in a place, and have a relationship between mind and consciousness. Make friends with my mind is what I say.
What's the difference between, this is a horrible question, and if you don't want to answer, you don't have to.
I'm excited.
In what you just described, what's the difference between mind and consciousness?
Mind is like maybe the external form that my thinking takes.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, to me, I think of consciousness as the energy or spirit behind all of it. The fact that it exists at all is the consciousness.
So, like, one of the things,
one
of the things that sometimes I try to say, I think what you're talking about, and is that when you're given when instructions are happening, when you're hearing an instruction or doing an instruction in an asana, it's the mind that strives and does, right? But the consciousness is the presence before the action, right? Yeah. So like, and you're saying that there's a relationship within mind to that, you know, what you'll see in the way that in my perspective, in the way that my teaching goes is that where you're calling a relationship to itself, which I think I get what your, or mind in relationship to consciousness, which I think is, again, these are just descriptions of the same thing, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the same motivation is what drives me to talk about sensations. Because it's like, for example, I think one of the best ways to teach this trust is the sensation of trust as it travels through the body,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like a lot of, so that's why I think for me in our approach to teaching asana from inside to out, that includes everybody, is to emphasize more on the sensations in the pose, not the doings of the pose
Mm-hmm.
as much, exactly trying to get at the same thing you're trying to get at there,
Yeah.
right? So I think that because I want, and you know, part of it is because of my personal experience. I started yoga at 25 after being injured at 13 because I so missed my body,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so for me, in my perspective, in my language, it's going to work for some people and not for others, is that I'm going to want to keep bringing this back to sensations, because to me, sensations more readily include the body, right? Like the idea of it, you know. So like if you do, you know, so like to me, one of the most under realized sensations is the sensation of support. Like we have to do better studying of that sensation,
Yeah, I love
right?
that.
Yeah,
Like
and
grounding.
yeah, but that's a form of like, and as soon the sensation of support quickly unpacks into the sensation of grounding, right? And what that is, and that even in the sensation of grounding, it's not just like pushing against something. There's an emptiness in the sensation of grounding
Mm-hmm.
that creates a rise. So already in the quality of your base, you have both what's there and not there.
Mm-hmm.
If you think you control your base in every pose and you don't receive from your base, good luck. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to end up in violence
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to try too hard. So again, same thing. Like we're going after similar things,
Yeah.
and our experiences are just bringing different language to it.
Yeah, it's really amazing to talk to you about it. I'd love to talk to you about that more, but I want to kind of go back to the topic a little around. I mean, I think this is the topic, but maybe
Yeah,
connect this back to fear. I mean, maybe that wasn't really our topic. Uncontrollable, the uncontrollable world.
that's right. That's right where fear gets its takes
Yeah,
its hold.
so that's what I think. That's what I'm feeling myself, and I think in the world right now, and a lot of yoga teachers and practitioners, you know, fear of this new world, the unknown.
Yeah.
Um, I love what you said about accepting the support. I was taking a class from my friend Sherry Clampett, and she was guiding me to feel the tree that was outside the
Mm-hmm.
studio, to
Mm-hmm.
feel that the roots of that tree were actually supporting my body, and it was amazing. It was kind of like brings that's what you said reminded me of that, like connecting to the way that um, my body is a product of the natural world, and this is all my body, right? This is all connected to my body, and that tree and the roots are there for my body to support me, and that connects me and makes me feel less afraid in a way, right? There's some that
Yeah.
reduces my fear.
See, the thing is that one of the things that I like to say is that the unified aspects of consciousness are actually in the uncontrollable, right? So like when you're allowing that you're connected, you're using, and notice when you even were talking to me about it, you had to go inward. One of the great lessons of asana is in order to expand and connect, you have to go towards the midline.
Mhm.
And you just did a version of the midline in order to reach the tree that travels across distance, right? So the unified parts of human consciousness that we're not very good at practicing. I think there's evolutionary reasons why that's true, right? exist. They live in the emptiness, in what looks like contentlessness.
Hmm.
That's the way that I don't think you just imagined being connected to the tree. I think you were able to let it in by going towards the midline,
Hmm.
right? And whatever the midline is, I'm talking in terms of asana like it's physical, but it also is exactly what's got to be happening in meditation, right? I mean, so this idea that the way you integrate and expand and connect to the world is by going in order to reach out. So like think about like trikonasana, and you're coming on trikonasana, and one of the ways you can protect the front leg, the hamstring attachment, is to lead with the upper arm as you come up, right? So instead of just coming up,
Hmm.
you lead with the upper arm coming up. But
Yeah.
if you really start to notice what's happening when you do that, you're not just leading from the upper arm. I tell people to come up from a mile away. Like, don't just come up from the upper arm. Realize that when you do that, you're actually connecting way beyond your body to come up less violently
Mm.
out of the pose. So
Hmm.
I think what you just described in connecting to the tree and the roots is actually happening all the time. That's part of what's actually happening, is that when asana gets more graceful, it actually is coming more from the unified aspects
Hmm.
of our consciousness. And so, yeah, I actually think that opening to the roots of the tree and letting it in, and doesn't it come in through your shavasana, right?
Yes.
It comes in through at that other intangible level when you can let that in.
Right.
That's for me anyway.
And that's in the sutras too. Like there's that sutra on asana. The one I always like to quote. I think it's 48 or something like that. Asana is practice the natural tendency for restlessness and meditating on the infinite. Right. That meditating on the infinite. That's like the emptiness. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
infinite is emptiness. So I
Yep.
think that's what you're saying. I think you're quoting Patanjali.
Well, yeah, yeah. This is going to be sacrilege what I'm about to say, but like my plan is to read the like read the sutras near the end of my life rather than now.
When you're
And
writing them, maybe you're
because
writing them.
what?
Maybe you're writing them.
Yeah, but my point is that like I want it experientially, and then to see if I understand it mentally. Like I think mentally, although I'm a relatively smart person, that energy is less organic. My mental energy feels less organic than my body. And
Mm.
so I want my appreciation of the wisdom to come through my body, and let my mind then go, oh, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because the times where I've made the biggest mistakes in my life is when my mind gets attached to a certain
Uh-huh.
um, way of thinking about it. And it's like, wait, actually,
Yeah.
I love it when I see something. I've heard different sutras quoted and stuff, and it's like I'll go like it makes me happy, like a little boy, like God, that makes sense. Like what you just said, that it's actually
Yeah.
on there. It's like that makes a lot of sense, and it makes me smile because I think I kind of can imagine why that would be, as
Well,
opposed to
you've
trying to learn
experienced it. I
the.
mean, that's yoga to me. You didn't have to, it wasn't an intellectual practice. It was
Yeah,
a embodied practice for you.
yeah,
You found that in your own body.
yeah. I mean, for me, what's really important is that I think that the fundamental teachings of what I believe that the yogis might have been trying to pass down were was was manifest only in a set of experiences, not in a set of beliefs. You have to have certain experiences, whatever they are, to actually really truly feel the unifying aspects of the universe,
Hmm.
right? And that's not the only way to think about it, but that's defining my path, right? and
Yeah.
and so that's why I love like the way that you're thinking about describing what you're doing,
Yeah.
in terms of mind consciousness. And I think that they're the same thing coming through different um, constructs of description.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important for us as a society to realize that the construct of description is not the experience. Right. And we need to, that's why, like, I'm not threatened. Like, I'm not threatened by what you're like. I got to sit here and like think about how you're thinking about it because I
Yeah.
might pick up insights from it.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's like, it's the sense, the realization of unity will never appear directly before our minds, in my opinion. It'll be lived.
Right.
It's a happening that's already occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I want, that's why I love, instead of trying to tell somebody that if they can have sensation in a paralyzed part of their body, and I can try to describe all the mechanisms of which it's true, it's your autonomic nervous system, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
Or if I can actually just have them feel it, that where
That's
they
cool.
thought they had sensation, they did,
Oh yeah.
then
Practice
it's
is what.
beyond words.
Yeah. Practice is what is the expression? I mean, it's so much more powerful than the talking.
Yeah. And then also when experiences start happening beyond the words of control, right?
Yeah.
Then we've connected between the playing field between student and teacher has been leveled, right? Because it's
Yeah.
an experience that's shared more than it's something that's taught. And that to me is at the very heart of teaching yoga to everybody is being able to share experiences as they're happening, like to know and smile and go, yeah, you felt that, didn't you? Yeah, me too. Because there's that unknowable part. Did we feel
Yes.
this thing exactly? You got to go, right?
No, it's
Leave it in.
okay. We can go, but I wanted to echo what you were saying. You said something earlier, but similar about how when you go within to go without, or like you go in to connect with others. I think you even said. I mean, that's powerful to me because I feel like that's what the world is doing right now. It's like we're all turning in, and it
I think
doesn't mean
that
we're isolated. Hmm?
Yeah, I think that's the opportunity of like you also get to re-choose the way you are inhabiting the outer portions of your life. This is such a good time for reflection. Do you really want to restart up what you said about like this is like will yoga ever be taught the same way or all that in the beginning? It's like you also get to look and go, boy, do I want to repeat
Hmm.
what deep down I know is this make. Maybe you don't join every single organization. Maybe you don't make every single commitment. Maybe who
Yeah.
knows? But this is one of the opportunities because with the receding of our lives is creating the opportunity to feel the emptiness again and to choose again. Right. And that I think is part of the opportunity of what's going on.
And it also connects us with each other, and I think that's powerful because I think people feel. I'm guessing, but I think many people feel lonely and isolated
For
through this
sure.
process. So I think there's a connection there in the emptiness, as you say, that we can find in our practice when we go within. That's so powerful. But yeah, I do want to go because I don't want to take up any more of your time. But I really appreciate.
So
I
one
really
of the ways to full circle quickly on this is
sure.
that like about why the uncontrollable unity is not ever going to be controlled. It's going to be experienced, right?
Mm.
And so if you the uncontrollable is such a powerful teacher because it will always resist your will, your mentalized will, right? It's bigger than that, it's deeper than that. And so I think that in your asana, like or whatever your practice is, allow in more and
Okay.
then keep moving.
Allow. Allow. I
All
like
right.
that idea. Yeah, allowing. Just allow.
Allowing. Yep.
That's all I do when I'm training people. It's just like it's okay. Just
Yeah.
tell, it's okay. Whatever you're doing,
Go
it's
for
all right.
it. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for doing this, Jivana. Thanks for Accessible Yoga for doing what you all do.
Thank you too, and I really appreciate what you shared with me today and with all of us. I mean, really, it's awesome. We'll put a link into your well, to the
Uh-huh.
website and the
Yep.
hub and everything. Yeah, and I hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you.
Be great, Jivana.
Take
Stay
care.
well, everybody.
You too.
Stay well. All right. Talk
Okay,
soon.
bye. Bye.